Your grandmother was the most valuable person in the tribe, or the one they left on the ice to die. Same person, same tribe. The only thing that flipped her from wise elder to left behind was how much food was left that winter. We like to imagine our ancestors respected their elders. Fire, wisdom, warm feelings? Some did. And the rest? Buckle up. Because what follows gets more unbelievable the further we go. Every fact worse than the last. And every one of them is documented. Getting old feels like a private fear. For most of human history, it was a group decision. And spoiler, the group did not always vote in your favor. Let's climb the staircase one step at a time. Start gentle. It does not stay gentle. And I promise you two things before we start. One, every single thing I tell you is real, or a legend I'll flag as a legend. Two, by the end, this stops being about them and starts being about you. Deal? Good. First step. Step one. The oldest, simplest version. A tribe on the move, following food, water, the herds, and one person who just can't keep the pace anymore. So the group makes a choice nobody says out loud. They keep walking, and they don't look back. Anthropologists have a clinical word for this, senicide, which is a very tidy way to say leaving grandpa on the trail. Some Inuit groups did a colder version. Literally, an elder who couldn't travel might be left on the ice. Now, here's where I stop you before you picture a monster. This was rare. It happened in famine, not a Tuesday. The last documented Inuit case was recorded in 1939, which, historically speaking, is basically last week. And honestly, the whole thing gets exaggerated. Half of what we know is travelers gossiping about strangers over the hill. One historian spent a career going, guys, check your sources. So, let's be fair. This first step is real, but rare, and softened by hunger. And you already know this fear, by the way. That quiet dread of being a burden? Congratulations. You're feeling the exact anxiety that used to get people left on the ice. Feels heavy? Good. Because this was the gentle step. Step 2 is where it stops being about keeping up. Because sometimes the tribe didn't wait for nature at all. This one has a ceremony. In parts of old Japan, there's a story with a name. Ubasute. It roughly means abandoning the old woman. A son carries his aging mother up a mountain on his own back. He climbs to somewhere remote, quiet, far from the village, and then he walks back down, alone. Now, historians will tell you Ubasute is mostly legend, more folklore than field report. Fair, noted. But cultures don't invent this particular nightmare for fun. They invent it because the math behind it was real. Every culture that tells an abandon the elder story is remembering something. They don't all copy each other. They arrive at the same grim answer separately. When strangers across the planet invent the same nightmare, it's usually not fiction. And that math, in a bad winter, was brutal. Picture it honestly. 9 mouths, food for 6. In the worst famines, families boiled leather and chewed tent poles. When you're eating your own clothing, every extra person is a countdown. An anthropologist named Anthony Glasscock looked at dozens of these societies, and he found the same uncomfortable trick again and again. The beautiful, honorable ceremony? Often a polite mask over survival math. Dress it up, sing the song, light the fire. The reason underneath is still not enough food. And before you judge them from your heated apartment, you've never had to do this math. Neither have I. Lucky us. So that's the ceremony step. Rituals, mountains, polite words for a hard choice. You think that's the top of the staircase. It isn't. Because so far, the old are victims of the decision. On the next step, that flips. And it's the part that genuinely breaks people. Step 3, the top of the staircase. Take a breath. Everything so far was something done to the elder. Here's the twist that flips your stomach. Often, they asked for it. Anthropologists living in the Arctic recorded it directly. In hard times, older people would ask the young to help them die. Scholars gave it a cozy name, altruistic self-sacrifice, which is a very polite, very academic way of saying grandpa volunteered. Among the Chukchi in Siberia, one researcher argued it wasn't even seen as suicide. It was understood as a sacrifice, a gift, with a purpose. The old one gives themselves, so the children get to eat. And it wasn't only about food, it was about dignity. A lot of them feared a slow, helpless end more than a chosen one. Think about what that actually means. It flips the whole story on its head. We came in picturing a cruel tribe and a helpless victim, but the person most at peace with it was often the one about to die. The kids are the ones falling apart. Grandma's the calm one. Let that sink in. Okay. Deep breath. because now we go to the single hardest one, and I want to be honest with you about what kind of fact this is. We're leaving hard documentation now and stepping into legend. But listen, in Sweden there's the folklore of the Ätestappa, the clan cliff, and a darker cousin of the story, the Etta Klubba, the family club. As the tale goes, some parishes kept one of these clubs in the church. Yes, in the church, right next to the holy water. Convenient. The purpose of the club, the story says, was to end the life of an elder who could no longer contribute. And then there's the story people always attach to it. They say it involves a future Nobel Prize winner, the Swedish writer Heidenstam. The story goes that his own father asked to be struck with the club, that the old man, feeling his time had come, asked his son to do it, and that the son stood there, club in hand, and couldn't. A father asking his child to end his life, a child unable to lift his arm, sit with that for 1 second, because whether or not it happened exactly like that, people told this story because it felt true to a world they remembered. That's the top of the staircase, a parent volunteering to die and calling it mercy. And here's the part that should mess with you. That fear, I don't want to be the burden, you have it too. It's tens of thousands of years old. You just have better heating. So that's the horror. Climbed all the way to the top. And if I stopped here, you'd think our ancestors were monsters. They weren't. And the reason why is the biggest twist in this whole video, because here's what they don't tell you after all that darkness. The old weren't the weak link. Most of the time, they were the reason anyone survived. Let me take you somewhere warmer. Tanzania, 1985. Anthropologists move in with the Hadza, expecting the hunters to be heroes. The mighty men go out to hunt and come back with mostly nothing. The ones quietly keeping the whole camp fed? The old women. Grandmothers digging deep, tough roots that little kids couldn't pull up. And the researchers noticed something that rewrites human history. Kids with a hardworking grandmother nearby survived more often. This is the grandmother hypothesis, and it points at something wild about you. Humans live for decades after they can have kids. Almost no animal does that. The theory, grandmothers who lived longer raised more grandkids, so the genes for long life spread. Grandma might be why you get old at all. And yeah, it's a strong idea, but it's argued about. In some groups, like the Ashe, dad seemed to matter more. Science is still fighting about it. But food was never the most important thing the old carried. This is the part I actually love. Picture a drought. The young are panicking. Every well they know is bone dry. And one old woman remembers a spring, Skirnei, from when she was a child, 50 years back. She walks them to water nobody alive has ever seen. She doesn't remember it because she's clever. She remembers because she's old. 50 years of dry seasons, floods, and hard winters, all filed away in one head. That head, the one that couldn't walk fast, just saved the entire tribe. Now scale that up. Some disasters hit once every 50 or 60 years. A flood, a poison plant, a winter only the oldest person has survived before. Everyone who remembers the last one is old, or already gone. Before writing, every old person was a living hard drive. Lose them, and you delete the only backup the tribe ever had. And they were clever about it. They didn't just remember, they packaged it. A scary myth about a monster in a valley? That might mean that valley floods. A song about a forbidden berry? A poisoning the tribe barely survived once. The scary story was the data, and the old were the ones who kept it alive. You get annoyed when grandma tells the same story twice. Congratulations. You're being rude to humanity's original hard drive, so which was it? Were the old sacred, or were they left on the ice? And here's the answer that's almost impossible to hold. Both. The same elder. Priceless mind in autumn. Burden on the ice in a bad winter. One failed harvest decided which face you got. Respect and abandonment weren't opposites. They were the same people. One good season apart. And be honest, we like to think we'd always be the kind ones. We've just never been that hungry. That's the only difference. But remember the honest part. The dark stuff was real, but rare. The bright part, the old, as memory, as providers, as the reason kids lived, that was every single day. For almost all of human history, in almost every group, the old were kept, fed, listened to. The ice was the exception. We just remember it because it's the part that shocks us. So let's come back to you, because you will get old too. And somewhere in you is that same ancient fear of being the burden. But here's the warm part. You're alive right now for one reason. Somewhere back in your line, an ancestor did not leave the old woman behind. They stayed, they listened, and they learned where the water was. We are the descendants of the ones who kept their elders. The ones who didn't, they left nobody behind to remember them. Which means every person watching this comes from a line that chose to listen. Your ancestors, every single one, kept the old woman around long enough to matter. That's not sentimental. That's just why you're here. So maybe the old were sacred and abandoned, monstrous and loving, all at once, just like us. One winter away from either face. So be honest with me. If you were old, starving, and slowing the group down, what would you actually want them to do? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.